I walked into the living room and my mom smirked like she had just won some twisted game. Alice, either you babysit Jessica's kids every weekend or you'll be paying full rent starting tomorrow, she said, her voice sharp like knives. My dad chuckled behind her, shaking his head as if I was some kind of joke. I froze for a second, my stomach twisting, but then I smiled quietly to myself. I had been planning this for months, and they had no idea. Hit like, subscribe, and share because you won't believe what happens next. I spent years quietly saving, working overtime at jobs no one thought mattered, and building something they'd never even imagine. While my sister lounged on the couch scrolling her phone and my parents criticized every move I made, I was turning my frustration into power. They thought I was helpless, broke, and stuck, but I wasn't. I had a secret plan to escape this endless cycle of being underestimated and mistreated. That weekend, as I packed my things into a small, dusty car I had bought with my own savings, Jessica whined about how unfair it was that I wasn't coming over. My mom snapped, "Alice, don't think you can just run away from your responsibilities." But I didn't say a word. I just drove off, my heart pounding with both fear and excitement. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, I was already imagining the cabin I had bought quietly months ago, tucked away by the lake, away from their judgment, away from their toxic expectations. I had worked silently, ignored their insults, and now I was about to taste freedom for the first time. And just when I thought I could finally relax, my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica popped up. "You think you can leave us behind? Don't get too comfortable." I smiled, gripping the steering wheel. She had no idea that leaving was just the beginning of a game I was about to win. The cabin looked even better than I remembered, nestled between tall pines with the lake glistening under the evening sun. I stepped inside and took a deep breath, the smell of fresh wood and freedom filling me like a drug. No rules, no lectures, no "you owe us" guilt trips, just me and the life I had built quietly. I set down my bags, but before I could even unpack, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica. "Mom's losing it. She says you're selfish. You'll regret this." I chuckled, leaning against the doorway. They didn't know I had already set up automatic payments for all my bills, invested smartly, and even had a little business venture that had quietly taken off while they laughed at my low-paying jobs. As night fell, I opened my laptop and checked the numbers. My small side hustle had turned into a substantial income, enough to live comfortably and never answer to them again. I smiled at the screen, imagining their faces when they realized I didn't need them, their threats, or their guilt trips to survive. The next morning, I decided to take a walk by the lake, letting the calm water soothe the lingering anxiety from years of being treated like I didn't matter. But as I rounded the edge of the dock, a familiar voice rang out behind me. "Alice, what are you doing here alone?" I froze. It was Jessica, holding a bag full of toys, and a sly grin stretched across her face. I thought you'd need some company," she said, her tone mocking, like this was her victory. But I didn't panic. I had learned long ago that appearances are deceiving. While she tried to intimidate me with her presence, I was already steps ahead. I knew how to turn their arrogance into my advantage. "Thanks," I said, lightly, my smile calm, almost too calm. "Actually, I've got everything under control." My eyes glimmered with the thrill of a secret they had no clue about, something that would flip the entire game in my favor sooner than they expected. And just as Jessica started inching closer, I heard a car door slam across the lake. A sound I knew meant someone unexpected was coming. Someone who would change everything. I turned toward the sound, my heart skipping a beat. Standing there was not Jessica, but my old college friend Ethan, the one person who had believed in me when no one else did. "Thought you might like some help," he said with a grin, holding a box full of what looked like legal documents and contracts. Jessica's eyes widened. Who invited him?" she stammered, her voice trembling for the first time. I didn't answer. I just let a quiet smile curl on my lips. The power balance was already shifting. Ethan set the box down and I flipped it open to reveal papers confirming my ownership of the cabin, my investments, and even a small startup I had been secretly building for months. "I didn't think you'd let them know just yet," Ethan said, a knowing look in his eyes. I shook my head. "Let them stay in the dark. Let them watch. The reveal will be sweeter this way." Jessica's smug expression faltered as she read through a few of the documents I handed her. "Wait, this is yours?" she whispered, disbelief cracking her voice. My chest tightened with satisfaction. Years of silent work, long nights, and being mocked, all finally culminating in this moment. Just then my phone buzzed again. A group text from my parents popped up. "Alice, come home. You can't just leave your responsibilities." I laughed quietly, holding up my phone for Jessica to see. Responsibilities? Funny, I think I've already taken care of mine, and more. Her jaw dropped. Ethan leaned closer and whispered, "You could show them exactly how much power you really have." I nodded slightly, letting the tension linger, knowing the right moment to strike would hit harder than anything they had ever done to me. And just when I thought the moment couldn't get any more intense, I heard tires screech outside. A familiar black SUV rolled up to the cabin, and I knew instantly. My parents had finally come to see what I had become. The SUV door slammed, and my parents stepped onto the gravel path, their faces twisted with a mixture of anger, disbelief, and something else. Fear. "Alice," my mom started, her voice sharp but faltering. "What is all this? Why didn't you tell us you—" I raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "I didn't tell you because you never believed I could do anything right," I said calmly, letting the words hang in the air like a thunderclap. My dad's jaw tightened, and for once he had nothing to say. Jessica stepped back, her earlier confidence shattered. My mom's eyes darted around the cabin, taking in the sleek modern furniture, the small art pieces I'd collected, and the neatly organized home office where my laptop still hummed with activity. This is yours?" she whispered, disbelief breaking through her usual condescension. I nodded. "Every bit of it. I've worked quietly, invested wisely, and built something that doesn't need your permission, your babysitting demands, or your insults." My voice was steady, but inside my heart was racing. I'd imagined this confrontation for years, planning exactly how it would go, how it would feel to finally stand on my own terms. My dad finally spoke, his tone forced and shaky. But you were supposed to help your sister. That's family." I shook my head, a small triumphant smile tugging at my lips. "Family? Family doesn't force me to sacrifice my life and my dreams while they lounge around and complain. I've taken care of myself. You never asked. You never cared. So I did it alone." Jessica's face was pale now. "Alice, how did you—" she started, but I held up a finger, silencing her. "I don't know anyone an explanation, Jessica, but you're going to watch closely now, because everything you mocked, everything you thought was just a kid's struggle, has grown into something real, something you can't touch." My parents exchanged glances, fear creeping into their expressions. My mom's voice trembled. "We didn't think you could. We never imagined." I stepped closer, letting the quiet confidence in my stance fill the space. "You didn't imagine because you didn't want to. You laughed when I struggled. You mocked me when I tried. But now, you're looking at someone who doesn't need your approval anymore. And that, right there, is the difference between who I was and who I've become." I could see their shock deepening, their carefully constructed control slipping away like sand through fingers. And just as I prepared to leave them with that image of my quiet victory, My phone buzzed again. A notification from my bank showing a recent deposit. A single number flashed on the screen, big enough to make even them pause. My savings multiplied by months of secret business deals, ready to fund my next move. My mom's hands trembled. Alice, how? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the cabin door wide, gesturing to the lake shimmering under the sunset. This is my life now. You're welcome to visit, but don't expect to control it. I've already won. For a brief moment, silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the gentle lapping of the water. Then Jessica muttered under her breath, almost too quietly to hear, "You really did it." And in that instant, I realized something thrilling. The game had just begun. They had underestimated me for too long, and now every next move I made would hit harder than they ever imagined. The next morning, I invited my parents and Jessica back to the cabin, telling them I had something important to show. Their curiosity and their arrogance made them arrive faster than I expected. They walked in, still wearing that mix of suspicion and superiority, completely unaware of what was waiting. I smiled and gestured to the living room where my laptop sat open, displaying a live feed of my business accounts, my investments, and the revenue from the side ventures I had quietly built. Every number screamed success, far beyond anything they could have imagined. My dad's face went pale. "Alice, this can't be real," he stammered. I leaned back casually, letting the tension hang in the air. "Oh, it's real. Every bit of it. While you mocked me, forced me into babysitting, and treated me like I had nothing, I built something no one could take away. And now, pausing to let the weight of the moment sink in, you're looking at someone who doesn't need your approval anymore." Jessica's eyes widened, guilt flashing across her face. I didn't think because you never wanted to believe," I said sharply. "But now you're watching the result of years of silent effort, hard work, and refusing to let anyone define my worth." My mom opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. "And before you ask, no, you can't touch any of it. Not because I don't love you, but because this is proof that I don't need you. Not your judgment, not your money, not your validation." I could see their pride cracking, their control slipping, and a mix of shame, surprise, and awe settling on their faces. Every insult they'd thrown, every dismissal they'd made, had been turned back on them with quiet satisfaction. Then I smiled and added, almost softly, "Remember all those times you said I couldn't do anything right? Watch closely now, because this is just the beginning." My parents could only stare as I picked up a small envelope from the table. Inside was the legal paperwork transferring complete ownership of the cabin to me, already signed, already final. The ultimate silent victory, the home they tried to guilt me into giving up for Jessica's convenience, was mine, fully and completely, and they couldn't take it back. Jessica swallowed hard, looking at me in shock. "Alice, you really did it." I laughed softly, a sound full of triumph and relief. "I didn't just do it, I lived it. Quietly, while all of you wasted your time doubting me. And now, the only thing left is for me to live my life on my terms, free, successful, and finally unshakable." As I stepped outside, the lake sparkling in the golden afternoon sun, I realized how far I had come, from being mocked, underestimated, and forced into unfair situations, to standing tall, victorious, and untouchable. The feeling of triumph was addicting, the proof of my strength undeniable, and the lesson clear: no one can define your worth except yourself. And as my parents and Jessica watched silently, I knew they'd never forget this moment. The day Alice finally became unstoppable.